Dan Larson was a champion for gun owners in the House. With him out now running for the state Senate, who's going to replace him as the pro-gun candidate in the House District 25 primary? That is the question we are hearing every single day right now. Aaron Dorr here, guys, with Wyoming Gun Owners, with a really important update for gun owners in House District 25. We're discussing this area right here. It's a portion of Park County around in Powell, Wyoming. And I told you a moment ago, this seat has been held for a long time by Dan Larson. And Dan Larson is one of the best fighters for the Second Amendment in the House, has been for a long time. He's now seeking a bump up to the state Senate. Be sure and watch our video covering that race as well. But now we have a four-way primary, and I had a squeeze to get all these guys on the board. So a four-way primary to replace Dan Larson. And your question to us, as always, is who is the pro-gun candidate and how do we know who we can freaking trust? Because everybody says they're pro-gun at election time here in Wyoming. So guys, as you know, what we do is a candidate survey program, and that's especially important in cases where we don't have an incumbent that we can talk about with a record. Of course, David Northrup has been in office. He was summarily booted out of office by gun owners for his horrendous votes and stances on your gun rights. We'll break those down here in a minute. But the rest of these three guys are challengers with no record. Now again, when we do a candidate survey program, the purpose of this is to get the guys or gals on the record. Because again, everyone raises their hand and says, I'm pro-gun. That doesn't mean anything. That's what Liz Cheney says too, when she backed massive gun control just last month in Washington, D.C. So the question is, who will put their views in writing? Who will tell us publicly where they stand on gun rights by signing the candidate survey? If they won't survey, in our experience, that almost always means they intend to be part of the Rhino Brigade in Cheyenne, and they don't want to have their bad votes on our gun rights prove them to be a liar. So it's easier to not survey at all and hope for the best, hope that nobody finds out about it, than to survey and then break that promise later on down the road. That has been our experience every single time. So we're going to start with the good news. Troy Bray and Rex Rich have both surveyed 100% pro-gun with Wyoming gun owners. Both of these guys have put their views in writing and vowed publicly, you can see their surveys on our website right now, that they will fight for gun rights here in Wyoming. So the specific questions, we asked them about 10. I can't fit all 10 questions on here right now, but we asked them 10 questions, and 5 of these are on the board right now. Waiting periods, repealing deadly gun-free zones, blocking red flag gun seizures, blocking fixed NICS mental health gun control, and blocking any attempt to ban our AR-15s. On these 5 questions and the other 5 questions on our survey, Troy Bray and Rex Rich are 100% pro-gun. And we're happy to acknowledge these guys have stood up and put their views in writing, fighting to expand our gun rights here in Wyoming. But that is where the good news ends, because we have other things to talk about. We'll talk about Chris Good next. Chris Good. Now, Chris Good primaried Dan Larson for this seat 2 years ago. Now, he got his butt kicked. He has butt kicked. But the thing is that 2 years ago, Chris Good refused to fill out his candidate survey. And right now, again, while Troy Bray stood up for gun owners and Rex Rich surveyed, Chris Good continues to refuse to fill out his candidate survey. So we have no idea where he stands on these issues. As you're about to find out, other candidates support waiting periods here in the state of Wyoming. Other candidates support mandated gun-free zones here in Wyoming. We don't know where Chris Good stands because he is refusing to discuss this issue and he's refusing to sign his candidate survey. You know, one of the biggest issues that we're facing right now as gun owners is red flag gun seizures. I mentioned the gun control bill that Liz Cheney voted for in June in Washington, D.C. That bill, which is now law, bribes the states with $750 million to try to get them to pass red flag gun seizures. There has always been rhinos here in Wyoming who want to pass red flag gun seizures, make no mistake. But now, with Merrick Garland, the AG, dangling what could be tens of millions of dollars in the faces of our legislature, we might see major action on this in January. In fact, we expect it. And so for Chris Good to refuse to condemn red flag gun seizures is a very big concern for gun owners. Same when it comes to fixed NICS, mental health gun control. You guys remember the story. 2020, the Rhino Republicans in the House and Senate were pushing fixed NICS, mental health gun control. Similar to a red flag law, it allowed you to lose your gun rights having never been convicted of a damn thing. We stopped that bill, but it's going to come back. We're not sure when, but it will come back. And when it does, Chris Good will not condemn this. Same thing for AR-15 bans, magazine bans, and every other question we asked him. For Chris Good to refuse to tell us where he stands on our gun rights, especially these days when they're under attack more than ever before in modern times, is insulting to every gun owner in District 25. And that brings up David Northrup. David Northrup. David's one of those guys who thinks he has a divine right to be in the legislature. If you ever talk to him, if you ever know him, if you ever run into him somewhere, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The problem with David Northrup, though, is that he supports active gun control. Let me give you some examples. On his candidate survey this year, which he filled out just a month ago, David Northrup said that he wants to mandate waiting periods on gun purchases here in Wyoming. That means that he would make you into a criminal if you don't wait 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever it is, before you buy a gun. Can you imagine being a woman who has a crazy ex-boyfriend or some stalker who, met you at work or something like that, who is scaring you, who's following you home from work, who's perhaps knocking on your front door at night, and you want to go buy a firearm to defend yourself, and you find out you have to wait 7 days because David Northrup thinks otherwise you should be a criminal. Can you imagine what that would feel like? That's what David Northrup wants to mandate. We asked him, are you sure you meant to answer this question this way? And he doubled down. He wants to make us criminals unless we wait before we can buy a firearm. It's madness. Number 2, repealing deadly gun-free zones. Repealing deadly gun-free zones. David Northrup, on his candidate survey, is on the record saying that if WIGO gets a bill on the House floor, like we've done numerous times before, to repeal deadly gun-free zones, he will vote against it. See, in David Northrup's mind, you and I we're just pawns, and we should have to wait to buy a firearm, and then if we get past the waiting period and buy a firearm, we should not be allowed to carry in all kinds of government buildings, in all kinds of educational facilities, in all these different places. David Northrup wants you disarmed. Now you may be asking yourself, how the heck can he possibly think that way? We all know that gun-free zones, so-called gun-free zones, are where mass shootings always take place. Churches, schools, mass transit situations, movie theaters. They're all the targets of madmen because these guys know that in these areas, nobody can fight back because the good guys are disarmed. Well, if you wonder how David Northrup can think that way, we do too. We do too. It's insulting that David Northrup believes that you should be a criminal if you don't wait before you buy a firearm, and you should be a criminal if you carry firearms in these so-called gun-free zones. They only benefit the bad guys, and everybody except for David Northrup understands that. You guys, you've heard us talk for years about rhinos in the state capitol, how the battle for freedom here in Wyoming is not Democrat versus Republican, it's conservative versus rhino. It's freedom fighters versus the moderate establishment class. David Northrup is the definition of what it means to be a rhino swamp monster. Mandated waiting periods, mandated deadly gun-free zones. Guys, this is insulting stuff. So this is our report on this race. If you come across Chris Good, Tell him to wipe that sanctimonious smirk off his face and answer his WIGO gun rights candidate survey so gun owners can see where he stands on the Second Amendment. If you come across David Northrup, ask him to apologize, demand that he apologize for wanting to make you a criminal for not waiting 3, 5, 7 days, 14 days, whatever, before you can buy a firearm. Tell him to apologize for trying to mandate deadly gun-free zones here in Wyoming. This is Wyoming, right? It's not Colorado, it's Wyoming. And for him to support gun control in the GOP nomination, he needs to hear from you guys about that. And if you see Rex Rich and Troy Bray, be sure and thank these guys for standing up, for signing their survey, and for proudly, loudly supporting your God-given right to keep and bear arms. Guys, that's our report. Do me a favor, share it far and wide. Make sure everyone knows where these candidates stand on your gun rights. And guys, join our fight today. Go to www.joinwygo.com.